Hello, you wonderful people. So for today's video, I want to just, talk about, obviously we know eventually in 2021, the Batman movie, Matt Reeves' Batman movie starring Robert Pattinson is going to be coming out. And obviously, other people have talked about it. And I just feel like, just making a video, because I've talked about a little bit more about like what I think we could have seen in this particular movie. Obviously, like no one knows at this point in time. It's a lot of rumors and speculation. And I figured I'd make up my own video kind of talking about it though. So obviously the thing going ahead is the fact is that this is a younger Batman. So this is Batman's earlier days. We're not going full-blown year one. I think stuff that's come out has basically been like, he's still rough around the edges, but he's not like completely new, So I think that's definitely going to be interesting to see how they end up tackling. I'm curious, like, are we going to get a thing of like understanding, like a quick cut at the beginning of like how he potentially, his training, like are you going to tie into like League of Assassins / League of Shadows? Because I mean that's, the Ra's al Ghul situation. I mean it was already done in the Christopher Nolan movies, but that's still part of his story. That might be something they say potentially for the future. Because I'm also curious, like, because obviously, like I said, it's not like this is year one Batman, but it's like it's him, a couple years in, probably not many, but maybe like 2 or 3, maybe. Like I said, he's still rough around the edges. But I'm curious how they're going to go about it. Are they going to do kind of like a Marvel Spider-Man PS4? If you're unfamiliar with the example I'm making, basically in that continuity, Peter's been Spider-Man for like 8 years. They might not go that far, is what I'm saying year-wise. But at that point, a lot of his villains were already established. Like at that point, he's already going up against like Scorpion and Electro, like a lot of his like rogues gallery, like super villains, or even like Wilson Fisk, him and Fisk have like crossed paths in that past 8 years, but you don't get it. Like the story just kind of jumps to like, oh, there's a Spider-Man in his prime. But even then, some established villains, I won't, don't want to spoil things, but they get unveiled during the game. You're like, oh, is that person going to become the villain we know they're going to or not? It's stuff like that. So I'm curious, is that something they're going to tackle where it's like, oh, you see familiar faces and you'll meet characters where like, oh, well, I mean, to be fair, like if you're well versed enough in Batman movies or Batman lore, the same thing could be said about any movie. Like, oh, like when they introduced Harvey Dent in the Nolan trilogy, you're like, that's Two-Face. You could tell that potentially was going to, like, if you're well versed enough. So I'm sure they'll do stuff like that, but then the question, like I said, will become like, are they going to become villains immediately? Are we going to see them kind of be a neutral character and then see them slowly transition into the villain? I think that'd be a pretty, kind of, once again, kind of, and it's a bit of spoilers even say this, but it's a similar thing to like the Spider-Man thing. I'm curious to see how they'll handle that in that regard, Because like I said, we're not getting like a Batman from the Arkham games, because that, like, his rogues gallery is very much established. At that point in those games, he's been Batman for a good chunk of time. So a lot of like his big name villains as well as his lower like known villains already locked up in Arkham and stuff like that. So that's got, I doubt we're going down that route. But I think the comparison I've made before and thought of is like the Telltale Batman game, which if you've never played the Telltale Batman game, I know Telltale's in that whole mess of a situation, but regardless, like, it's a really good story, and I like what they do with a lot of like, it's the example I keep using. I love what they do with like Batman and Joker's relationship in that game. It's like, it's nuts to see it what it is. Like, I don't want to spoil things, but also like the way they handled other villains and stuff like that. Because that's the thing, this movie's also supposed to be like multiple villains, and I think Telltale could be an example of how you could handle that. Because then that's the thought process. Like, there's going to be a multitude of villains. Some of them, it's going to be like a red herring situation of like, oh, we're dealing with this villain, but it turns out it's this villain. Like, obviously, like I said, we're diving into the more detective side of things, which hasn't really popped up too much in the movies. And I'm personally interested to kind of get like that kind of a darker, like, not necessarily like darker, but like, a detective story from Batman, seeing him kind of figure stuff out. I'm curious to see what his tech is going to be like. Is he going to have a lot of it? Is he going to have a little bit? I'm curious, because obviously, like, because obviously this is a younger Batman, so this is probably going to take place maybe like the 80s, maybe the 90s, something like that. I think I heard from someone it was going to be like in the 80s. That's a whole thing in itself, but I'm so curious, like I said, what the tech is going to be. Is he going to be a very like, oh, like, nah, I don't really have much tech. Like a great, once again, an example is like the Batman Telltale game. That's like a very tech savvy Batman. Like I said, that's because even that's using him at like, oh yeah, I'm not new, but I've been around the block a couple times as Batman, but it's still kind of relatively somewhat fresh for him. So I'm curious to see what take they have on that. what particular villains. Like, there's one particular storyline of her people bring up, I think it's called like The Long Halloween. I'm not familiar with it all, but some people are wondering like, oh, are you going to set up a Robin type of situation? Because apparently if you did that storyline, like I said, I'm not familiar with it, you'd have to have Robin, because I guess he plays a big role in it. So it's like, that's another thing too. Are you going to like roll out slowly the rest of the Bat family? Because obviously, once again, we're dealing with a younger Bruce Wayne, so that might not be something. It's like, no, let's focus on Batman for now. I mean, to be fair, this is, you know, thought process for like sequels upon sequels. It depends on how well the movie does. I think it'll do well. I know it's like we're talking about a movie that isn't out yet. No one's seen anything. People are just speculating on what it's about, but you know, it's Batman, so you know. But regardless, I'm so curious, because like the ones I've heard kind of thrown out there were Catwoman and Penguin, which obviously I think that'd be kind of neat, especially if you do the detective noir like type of style, like a relationship between Batman and Catwoman. Is she already established? Is this going to be like his first time running into her? Like I said, establishing certain enemies, like, oh, Penguin. I'm also curious, like, what continuity do you go by? Because some stuff, it seems like Oswald and Bruce have a past, just because like they're from like very well-off, wealthy families. So is that something, you know, they were kind of rolling in the same circles family-wise and status-wise? Is that something they do? Is there not going to be a connection? Once again, this is just me pulling from like the Telltale game. I don't know if that's something that's come up in the comic books or not. Hell, and even that's something too, like what about the, like, I don't know if they do the Court of Owls storyline, just because like that was done in Gotham, but I mean, we could still do it. But it's like the different like families of Gotham, because that's the thing, like, are you going to start off a little more street level, like kind of like a Don Falcone type of situation, once again, Telltale Batman, or like a Gotham situation? Are you going to start off kind of more like that and build your way up to, like, you know, the families of Gotham, as well as the Court of Owls type of situation? I'm curious, like, and it's something I've talked about when it comes to Batwoman. I didn't know there was bad blood. Apparently there's kind of a blood feud between the Waynes and the Kane family, which Martha and Thomas getting together must have been like a whole thing in itself. Is that something they tackle at all? Like, would it even be a big part? Like I said, I'm sure that would be pertaining to whether or not they do the rollout. But then again, there's like, I forget, there's the Batwoman series to begin with, so that could just be focused on that. So, you know, but yeah, I'd love to see what other villains they'd introduce. Like, one villain that just always kind of sticks in my mind, I think would be interesting, especially for a detective story, would be Clayface. You know, because I'd also be interested to see what they do with Clayface, because I think typically, and this is just based on like a Lego Batman game I played a while back, was like, I think he's an actor that ended up in the situation and became Clayface. Basically, he can mold himself to look like anybody, not just their face, but his entire body. What I'm wondering too, it'd be kind of neat if they did the Batman the animated series, like it's from like the mid 2000s. It's just called The Batman, and Clayface is kind of a spoiler, but he was at, like, there's two cops that Batman kicked it with. One of them, she really didn't like Batman. She didn't like the whole vigilante thing. But her partner, he was pretty open to the whole, like, yeah, I like Batman, I like what he does. I don't remember what the Commissioner Gordon situation was like in that in that series. I don't remember whether like Gordon already retired or was he. It's been a while, so I don't remember what the whole situation was. But particular, her partner ended up becoming Clayface, which is kind of interesting. It adds this interesting like element of like, oh, this is someone that Bruce knew that he was trying to try to get him back. It's like, come on, you don't have to be the villain that you're becoming. Like, you know, it added that connection, and I think that's kind of a neat thing when you you know, when it's not just like, oh, this is some random bad guy. It's like when your character, like Batman, having a connection to one of his villains like that on a personal level. Like I said, whether they do the Oswald situation or if they did a similar thing in this case with Clayface, I think that'd be so neat. Obviously, you have your go-tos. Like, I'd love to see what they do with the Riddler. Like, obviously, we only got a little bit of Two-Face in the Nolan movie, so like kind of getting a more focus on Two-Face would be interesting. Like I said, you know, the whole complicated situation with Catwoman, like I said, depending on what the relationship is, it's kind of flirtatious aspect of like, oh, you're going after this thief, but she always slips through your fingertips. I think there could be a lot of nice like cat and mouse type of, you know, situation with like the very complicated relationship that Batman and Catwoman have. I'm curious, are we going to, like, because he isn't a newbie, but I'm curious to see, it'd be kind of neat to kind of see, like, obviously it'd probably be a part of his arc, the whole aspect of him failing. It's like, yeah, things don't, because he isn't well versed in being Batman, he might, like I said, still be rough around the edges, so stuff might not be as smooth. But I'm also interested in, and it's always one of the things I think is dope about Batman, is that Batman has this like boogeyman status. Like obviously like Batman v Superman play with that a lot. Like obviously you probably won't go to that extreme of like him branding people and stuff like that. But that's always the cool thing of Batman just hiding in the shadows and bad guys are walking and he grabs them and snatches them up and someone turns around and is like, what the hell happened? Where'd Bob go? That type of thing. I think making, like I said, making him the boogeyman, making him the monster almost perspective, I think is such a neat thing about Batman that you could play around with. I'd also be curious to see if there's going to be that type of thing where thugs are like, yeah, you heard about what happened to Jimmy? No, what happened? Some dude in a bat suit beat him up. Like, what the hell? Some crazy nut job is running around in a bat suit only in Gotham type of situation. You know, like I said, this is where my mind is with every. Obviously, like I said, these are just my thoughts. I'd love to get to know yours in the comments down below. What do you want to see in this movie? What do you expect to see? Do you like some of the ideas I have? Or you're like, nah, bump all that? You know, especially if you're well-versed in the comic books, do let me know like what particular storylines. Obviously, you'll have to go too deep and, you know, don't want to spoil things for some people, but kind of give some general ideas of like, oh, there's this pretty neat storyline I'd love to see them bring to live action. So let me know all your thoughts and stuff in the comments down below. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. Until next time we meet, be happy, be safe, love, like, to force, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.